So is this off a low base? Is this good? Obviously, growth is good news, but how good is it?
No, in fact, Dave, it's off a high base. Last year, you might recall, we grew at extraordinary rates. In fact, we concluded the year at 16%. The first quarter, we were growing around about 25%. So whilst the percentages are down, the numbers are up. So growth is actually very significant in terms of the numbers of vehicles sold. The best we achieved was in 2005 was 714,000. We could easily conclude this year close to 600,000. So, I think the recovery is significant.
So we're not back to where we were, but we're getting there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you expect this to be sustained, given that interest rates are still low, but they may not be that much low for that much longer?
No, absolutely. But I think a lot of the criteria that contributed towards the healthy growth last year are still pretty much there. Interest rates is always an unknown, but I think the likelihood will probably continue at least for the rest of this year. A very competitive market from a consumer choice perspective. Household debt levels, I think, are coming down to some extent. But I think what is also driving it is there is still quite a significant pent-up replacement demand coming through. As you correctly said earlier on, people have had to drive their cars for longer. And it's a case of having to change them now because motor plans are running out and so on. It's all to do with affordability. They look at what's going to cost them every month and they're making a business decision around that. The worrying one, of course, is the fuel price, because that is very much a significant component of the cost of motoring.
Except whether you're driving an old car or a new car, you're still going to spend a lot of money on fuel. So surely that's not a disincentive to buy a car.
No, but what it is doing is influencing the trend, the down buying trend, not only here but internationally. If you interrogate the numbers, significant uptick in the entry-level, so-called entry-level vehicles. And the luxury vehicles are still quite robust, but it's the middle of the range where people seem to be moving away from. And the gap essentially between the entry-level vehicle and used cars is still quite narrow. So I still believe that's one of the reasons why the used car market is somewhat flat.
As I said with Ian, is that it's a very good indicator, this, of confidence and money to spare, because if you're buying a new car, I mean, you can get a very good second-hand car, or as they say, pre-owned, with a warranty for the next 3 years, with done 30,000 on the clock, at a much lower price. Why would people buy new cars given that there is that available? I
think it's precisely to do with affordability. Whilst they might like to have a more prestigious car parked in their driveway again, which they might have had last time around as a new vehicle, temptation is to buy one of those now, but they're going to look at the overall cost of motoring, and all those components have gone up. Insurance is going up. Fuel is a scary unknown.
You haven't mentioned tolling yet. Now there's a lot of political controversy about this.
Absolutely.
I think the estimates are 500 to 600 rand a month between Johannesburg and Pretoria.
Most certainly, and we've been quite vocal as an organisation opposing that, and of course it's not over yet. But all these things have been taken into account. The motorist seems to be an easy target, and always has been when it comes to collecting taxes and so on.
Well, it's a bit like food, isn't it? In South Africa, certainly with the public transport as it is. Do you see public transport making a difference at some point to this? Because we've got BRT, we've got Gautrain, we've got projects, but there's no reduction in cars on the road.
No, and I think our public transport is nowhere near where it should be. And there's a thought that, if you look at with what happens to Sasol's profit as the price of oil goes up, I mean, it goes up almost to obscene levels. And there is an argument and a thought that perhaps there should be some kind of windfall tax, not to reduce the price of fuel, but perhaps to take that money, fence it and spend it on public transport infrastructural upgrade.
We've just been looking at the details on the screen there. Individual manufacturers, are there trends there? I mean, obviously you don't, as an organisation, favour particular manufacturers, but are there trends?
Particularly the small guys. A lot of in fact, if you look at the figures of AMH, Amalgamated Motor Holdings, we're importing a lot of the cars from the east. And I might add, the modern car today, the modern entry-level vehicle has all the bells and whistles. Power steering, aircon, very, very reliable, very quiet, very comfortable. There has been a swing towards those vehicles, and you only have to look at the market share of the importers of some of those vehicles to see that that's where the market is moving.
Of course, if you look at when you go and hire a car, it's almost impossible to find a car without air conditioning, whereas in the old days, half the cars available for hire, so that bears out your point.
Absolutely, no longer optional, these are standard features.
What about real prices of cars? Because there was a period where there was such pressure with the recession of the late 2000s, and I think you made the point then that cars may seem expensive, but in real terms, they were static for a long time.
Well, that is still very much the case. If you look at new car price increases over the last 5 years, it has pretty much been in negative territory. And whilst obviously that's going to be driven and influenced to some extent by the rand, and I think it probably is a likelihood of some price increase this year. I believe it will be moderate, but in real terms, still very, very well contained.
In our industry, sales are up 4.8% year on year, but exports down 20%. Is that the same in the same period?
Yes, and of course that is consistent with what is happening in Europe. The demand is obviously down.
Now, how important is that to our industry? Because it is a mixed signal, isn't it?
Very important indeed, because I just heard last night that in fact since the improvement in the market, there's been no less than 15 billion rand additional investment by vehicle manufacturers. So, and this is job creation, it's good for the balance of debt and so on, and the demand is going to affect us from a sustainability perspective, and obviously the confidence levels of those investors. It is a worrying situation.
Confidence level among your members?
Very conservative, but almost deja vu, because this time last year, and in fact if you looked at the forecast early last year, they were extremely moderate, as low as 9-12%. And as I say, we were in the first quarter up to 25%. And I'm seeing the same kind of trend now. I think traditionally we're kind to be conservative. Some people are saying 5%, but my sense is that it's probably going to be closer towards 9 or 10%.
Let's look at commercial vehicles, and I don't know if you measure the heavy vehicles in this.
Down, and I think that's reflective of the state of business, not only confidence levels, but the state of business activity.